So today we're diving into balancing between innovation and continuous improvement in product development.
I'm going to pause you because we got the wrong picture. We're going to talk about why product decisions don't get exec buy-in and how to fix it. It changed about a month ago. For some reason, the pictures ended up wrong, but no worries.
Okay, I'm sorry for that.
Not a problem.
But thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience with us. And so let me quickly introduce myself. So I'm Violet. I'm the social media manager here at Productized. I will be your host for today's session, just like last time. It's actually my second time hosting a webinar, and I think a few of you were here from the last one too. So really happy to be here with you all. And let's take a quick moment to talk about Productized. So as some of you probably know, we organize a yearly conference, and the very first one dates of all the way back to 215. This photo right here, 2000, sorry, 2015. But yeah, this photo right here is actually from that very first edition. And here's another one of the very first photos from when Productized was just getting started. And so, yeah. Like I mentioned, the event's been happening every single year since, always driven by passion, of course. And over the years, we've welcomed some iconic thought leaders like Teresa Torres, Rich Mirono, Bodica Dutt, Melissa Perry, and many more. And we've put together a playlist called 10 Years in 10 Talks on our YouTube channel. So go check it out. It's really worth watching. And now just to give you a few numbers about Productized, we have had over 4,000 participants, which is just very huge, and over 1,000 hours of product training. Also, over 65 different nationalities from all over the world, and with more than 100 workshops, more than 100 conference talks, and community of thousands of products. And this year, we'll be welcoming people from big name companies like Netflix, Facebook, Google, but also from smaller teams and independents. Everyone's welcome at Productized, obviously. And so for this year, it's the 10th edition. It's going to happen on October 5th to 17th. So October 5th, it's the leader day, and October 16th to 17th is the actual conference. This year, we're focusing on a big question, how to create change together. And as for the venue, this year we're hosting the conference at the Field Meeting Center. It's a new spot for us, and we're pretty excited about it because it's a big space. It's right by the river in Lisbon, so it should be a really nice experience. And we will have there 12 hands-on workshop on October 16, and then 11 inspiring talks and panels on October 17. The space is like perfect for connecting. We are expecting hundreds of product people, so lots of chance to meet, chat, and share ideas. There will be great coffee from real baristas and plenty of time to like enjoy it during our generous break. We'll have also a cool vibe with the DJ, music, and all that stuff. Also an after party, so stay until the end. That's very great. And now for the tickets. So tickets are on sale now with the early bird discount. It's 35% off, but only until the end of the month. So that's just 1 week left. So don't miss it. And now it's the wrong title, but let me say a few words about our speaker. And I have to say that his background is seriously impressive. So I'm going to give you a quick bio of Phil Hornby. So he's an experienced product coach, former head of product, and the founder of for product people. He's trained over 1,000 product professionals and helped scale multiple product organizations from the inside. What sets Phil apart is his no-nonsense, straight-talking style. He's great at making business thinking clear and actionable for product folks at all levels. So yeah, with that, I will stop sharing and hand it over to Phil. So yeah, I encourage you all to tune in and take notes. Phil, the floor is
Perfect. Thanks
yours.
very much. Should we be hitting the record button out of interest?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're going to talk about why your product decisions don't get exec buy-in, because fundamentally most product work is about decisions, and maybe some ideas on how to fix it. So the hidden truth of all product work is that it's about business. Sorry to say this, if you're focused on just building stuff, you are missing at least 50% of the work, at least 50% of what you should be doing and caring about. If we think about how we define product management, there are many definitions out there. The one I prefer is to create and capture customer and business value at scale. Customer value, aka value if we take the 4 risks, is about what we deliver to our customers and how it helps them in their businesses and creates value for them. But viability, as one of the 4 risks that we talk about in product management, is actually about business value. It's about, do we make enough money? Can we survive? Because the reality of our business is that money is the fuel of our business. If we don't make money, we're not going to be here in a few years. And yes, for the majority of the last 10 years, in the SaaS world in particular, the mantra has been growth at all costs. Let's just pour it on. And there's things like the rule of 40, where you need to, your growth or your profit need to be add up to 40%. And when cash is cheap and easy, great, we can do that. But cash is not cheap and easy anymore. So the business angle is returning. And in fact, if we look at things like the Airbnb change a couple of years ago, where they said, we're getting rid of all our product managers, we're going to put them in product marketing, and we're going to make them be closer to the customer, care more about the business outcomes, care more about the strategy. And I looked at that announcement and thought, what have they been doing until now? That's their job. In fact, if they've not been doing it, they've not been doing their job. Because ultimately we need to survive. And I loved seeing Radhika Dutt's picture up a few minutes ago, because Radhika has this awesome model called survival versus vision fit. And it's a model that I've used quite a lot recently since I discovered it, because it explains a trade-off that I'd been making for forever. It explains the trade-off where I'm doing things that are a great fit for the vision of my product, the direction I want to go. But sometimes I actually need to do things that are about survival, making sure I've got the cash coming in the door, that the business is still going to be there. Because you can have the best vision in the world. If the company goes out of business, you're never going to achieve it. So you've got to look after both aspects. And sometimes you will take some vision debts, as Radhika talks about, in order to survive, to fight that next battle, to be able to create that custom value in the long term. And so, already had a quick introduction. As I say, as we said, I'm a product coach. Although, I'll be honest, 6 weeks ago, I went back to being a super IC. I made the choice to go back and do product work again, partially because of the state of the economy and the state of the market, and partially because I actually miss doing the work. And the interesting thing is, over that time, that last 6 weeks, I think I've spent at most 3 days looking at developing the product, and more like 5 weeks thinking about the commerciality, the pricing, the licensing model, the business model, etc. Because ultimately the product won't be successful if we don't deal with those things. And at the heart of all of that is decision making and prioritizing which decisions need making. And I believe the heart of all product management work is decision making, hence the mission that I distilled here, which is about thinking clearly, making strong decisions, taking powerful action, and driving high impact outcomes. So how did I learn this kind of whole business is important aspect of product? And it's most fundamental, I learned it the hard way by having to do it. When I started my product management journey, I didn't even know I was doing product management. In fact, my managing director in 2001, when I started as an engineer, was a product manager in the 1980s. Yeah, product management has been around a long time, even if you don't realize it, because a lot of people didn't really see it until around 2010. And so we had product ways of working throughout that time. And in around 2008, we were acquired by a larger organization called Trimble, based out of the US. And within 6 months, I'd inherited their global platform and had a $300 million profit and loss responsibility as an individual contributor. Just let that sink in. $300 million P&L as an IC. Now, you don't get that these days. Your minimum going to be a director or a VP to get that level of responsibility. But product management was always the path into general management. The classic qualification you had as a product manager was an MBA. Now, I didn't have one at the time, but I went back and did one later because I recognized the value of the learning that went with it. What I actually learned at that point was I'd learnt it, again, the hard way by doing the work, but I got the piece of paper eventually. But it was the classic expectation of anyone leaving a Harvard MBA course was they wanted to be a product manager because they heard that CEO of the product mantra. And so product managers needed to bring that commerciality. Now, if we look at the last 10 to 15 years, on the other hand, that's kind of dropped. If we see things like the rise of agile, the rise of lean thinking, it's made product managers have to get more and more tactical, more and more deep into the work that they're doing with the teams. It's made the role a lot more junior, if I'm honest. An IC product manager back in 2008 was a significantly more senior role. These days, they're more equivalent to a director or head of product is what used to be an IC. That's not a bad thing. It's a change. It's an evolution. But you still need to care about that commerciality, the profitability, the viability of your products. Is it going to make money? Does it make sense to do this thing? The thing is, I'm not the only person who learned this lesson and learnt it this way. I'm sure you all recognize this guy, Marty Kagan. Well, he's often referred to as the godfather of product management. And Marty's a friend, and I remember when he explained or told the story of his path into product management, it was quite similar. He was at Hewlett Packard, which is basically the home of technology product management. And when he spotted this role, he was an engineer who wanted to become a product person. He went and found a product person and said, how do I become this? What do I need? Hey, help me. And he got asked a load of commercial questions and he had no answers. He didn't understand it. Over a few months, he was quite insistent. And that product manager ultimately found a person in finance that would take him and teach him all that fundamental financial understanding so that he could take part in those conversations to understand them. I mean, these days, I contend that product management should live in two teams. There's the development team and there's the go-to-market team. And in the go-to-market team, you've got to be talking commercials. It's just a fundamental part of the role. But for the last 10 to 15 years, product managers have got away with not doing it. It's actually caused a massive rise in the product marketing manager. It was a much lesser and less well-known role back then. They've taken on a bit more of the commerciality. But it's super important to us to be successful. And increasingly, because business is recognized as an important part of the success of the business and being able to have these conversations and have influence, you need to grasp these concepts. And I believe there are fundamentally 3 secrets that we can talk about to help you overcome that. The first one is learning to speak the language. Dollars, cents, pounds, yen, renminbi, whatever currency takes your fancy, you need to be able to speak in it. Because I bet if you listen to anyone senior in your organization, that's what they speak about. Even your CTO will be talking about money. Virtually everything can be converted into money, and it allows for a lot of comparison and an easier decision-making conversation. There are a bunch of financial terms. I think I put 12 on the page here. I could have put 100 more. Revenue, gross profit, net profit, operating income, contribution margin, churn, ARPU. I haven't even got ARR on here, which is probably the one that most of you will be familiar with. In the chat, give me a feeling from that previous page, how many of the 12 do you understand? Is it 1? Is it 10? Is it all 12? Give me some flavor in the chat. And I will warn you, I will wait for some answers. I've done more discovery interviews than probably every one of you. So I'm very good at staying quiet. 5, churn. A smiley face. Most of them, Jorge. Okay, lucky you. I find that many product managers just haven't been exposed to them. And if so much so, even their leaders haven't been exposed to them, because over the last 10 to 15 years, the function has grown so much that people came in a more technology oriented role and then were promoted into leadership roles. And now there's more pressure to bring more commercial understanding into the organization. Actually, those leaders aren't able to help because they don't have the fundamentals themselves. Then, okay, you understand most of them or some of them. Give me a similar, another response. How regularly do you use them in conversation? Not currently. No. Interesting, Jorge. So you're not in products at the moment, but that sounds like you probably come from a business background then. Rarely, yeah, Gabrielle, not surprising. I'll tell you now, if you start to use it, you will gain more influence. So think about using financial terms to communicate that impact. You need to understand it and then communicate it. Because at its heart, product management or any product activity, excuse me, should be doing one of these 4 things: increasing revenue, protecting revenue, reducing costs, or avoiding costs. And I mean, for some people, this is revolutionary things that I'm saying because it's commercial stuff. But I'm going to use another example of someone who's on a slide earlier. This comes out of Escaping the Build Trap. This is Melissa Perry. This is not me creating it. It's like, this is the fundamentals of products. If what you are doing isn't driving one of these 4 things, you probably shouldn't be doing it. In fact, I believe you can even reduce it further. Because if you think about it, really, you're increasing profits or protecting profits on any of these. If you are protecting revenue, you're protecting profit. If you're reducing costs, you're increasing profit. If you're avoiding costs, you're protecting profit. If you're increasing revenue, you're increasing profit. So really, you can put it into these into just 2 boxes. I should be driving profit. And I know that can sound wrong to some people. It's not, but it's just the reality that as an organization, the profits are what pay your salary, what fund the future of the business, what allow you to develop the product. Without it, you don't exist. And as product people, often when we do initiatives, we end up communicating something along these lines. I'm a big fan of a Mad Lib style fill the blanks statement as a starting point for how I think about what I need to communicate. And so as a product manager, we typically do something like this. By addressing this customer or user problem, we expect to drive this outcome. When in this context, where an outcome is a customer behavior. That might be an example of, by removing onboarding friction, we expect to increase activation by 10%. We might get more specific on the friction if we've done Tories, it was on another one of the slides earlier. If we had an opportunity solution tree in front of us, we might put the particular opportunities we're thinking we can address into that initial statement. But basically, we might be looking at how we reduce onboarding friction. And we'll often just stop at this level as a product person because, or worse, we'll go and say, this is the feature we're going to ship and not even talk about this. If we're talking about outcomes, though, we're going to say, we're going to solve this problem, and that's going to drive this particular change in user or customer behavior. But it doesn't go far enough. We need to add the impact. So this is where I like to say, and so the impact, the business metric, adding this will help connect to what the business cares about, will help get your CEO on board because they care about the business impact. Now, do we know that this is a lagging metric? Yes. Does that mean it's still wrong to talk about? No. It's a lagging metric. And do we know that there's a perfect correlation between these two? Maybe not. But we have a working theory. At every step here, there's a working theory of addressing this problem will drive this customer behavior, and driving this customer behavior will drive this business level impact. That's our assumptions, and so we should express it so that people know what we're trying to achieve, which might equate to something like this. By removing the onboarding friction, we expect to increase activation by 10% and so increase annual recurring revenue by 5%. We're not going to see that impact for some time, but we've set ourselves up to say this is what we are driving towards. This is what we believe the impact will be, so that people can see that we are connecting to the top line, to the thing that the customer, that the CEO and the rest of the organization care about. And yes, we've probably done some discovery as well, if we're a product person. So we should tell them why we think this, why we think there's that causal link between the things, what the data and the anecdotes tell us about, possibly even our intuition. I don't believe in the phrase data-driven or even data-informed anymore. I prefer to use the phrase evidence-informed. We can have quantitative data, we can have qualitative anecdotes and data like that. We can also have our intuition, and sometimes an opinion is all you've got. Tony Fadell talks about it in his book Build. He's the guy who created the iPhone and the iPod and Nest learning thermostats. And there he talks about some decisions are just opinion based. Accept that. But actually state why you believe something. Put it behind that statement of belief. And that will give you more credibility. And so it might look something like this. By removing onboarding friction, we expect to increase activation by 10% and so increase ARR by 5%. We believe this because 30% don't complete onboarding, and follow-up interviews report confusion during sign-up. And we might be able to be more specific. I'm giving you a very simple example. And would I exactly state it like this when I'm talking to my leaders? Probably not. I'd craft it into a better language. But by starting here, I have a clear, simple way of making sure I'm ticking all the boxes, and then I can craft it into better language. And then we come to, great, we're going to talk about impact. What if it's the wrong impact? What if it's not what people care about? In the chats, let me know what the top business metric is in your organization. Hint, it's the one they talk about in the town hall meetings every time. Is it our ARR? Is it MRR? Is it, NPS, Andre? I hope not. Sadly, it will come up, the pseudoscience that it is. And I guess it can give some sort of qualitative feeling for customer satisfaction. But what about a financial metric? What's the top one that people talk about in your organization? Net new assets. Okay. So that's fintech. So it's I assume deposits. So yeah, I was guessing it'd be assets under management or something like that when you meant assets. So it's the increase in the number of assets. Interesting. And there's probably some sort of tacit connection from there into other things, like we make money by the more assets that we are managing. Profitability, Andre, absolutely. ROI, perhaps. It's usually something simpler, though. It's usually something like annual recurring revenue or net profits or gross profit or EBIT, perhaps, which is a form of net profit. It's usually the thing that's the absolute top business metric. And we might put these all things on a scale. I talked about outcomes and impact earlier. As product people, we regularly talk about outcomes over output. But really, there's a continuum. We have inputs as well. The number of hours I work is an input. The things I ship, I deliver, those are an output. The outcomes are the customer behaviors that we change, and the impact is the business level. And we can think in this kind of linear scale that one leads into the other. You know, Amazon really like to talk about inputs, controllable inputs, because one of the things that they've worked out is that they have a really clear connection in some places. If they list 10,000 more products with a 5-star rating in a particular category, they know that will lead to more purchases, customer behavior or outcomes, and that will lead to more revenue or more profits at the impact level. So actually, if you can create a clear chain all the way down to an input, actually it's much easier to control and it's much less lagging. Trying to find those causal relationships can be challenging though. And that's why, as product people, we tend to latch onto this outcome because it's about the right level of control to be able to move fast enough and therefore see what change we're making with the things we deliver. But we're only doing that to ultimately deliver impact. And in Evidence Guided, Itamar Gilad actually points out you might want to think about this as 2 trees instead. One that has your North Star metric at the top, your product metric, your customer behavior, what's the thing you want to see changing. With a company I worked with last year, their North Star metric was number of learning outcomes for their customer or for their users. So it's like, that's the thing we're trying to drive at the top of our business, our product metrics. But at the same time, ARR, annual recurring revenue, was the top business metric. And they didn't actually have a direct relationship with each other. They were really 2 trees. And stepping down from each of those things, you could start to work out how they thought about these things. Todd Olson has a really nice approach where he says, if you're thinking about the input metrics to the one above, work out what the formula is to do that calculation. And that's what creates those input metrics. And at first you think, well, it's obvious. ARR is, I know, monthly charge times by number of customers, and therefore we've got it. But actually you find very quickly when you go down that tree, different people in the organization think about them in a different way. And you find there are 5 different formulas of how people think about how they get to each of these metrics. And so you need to pause and find out what's that common understanding, that common model that you can use to ladder all the way down in terms of these metrics. And then you realize after you've done it a bit that there's a point where it overlaps. The business metrics and the customer metrics all come together with in a certain area. There are certain metrics that are an input on both sides, which is great because that creates high leverage. If you work in that pink zone, you have a direct line up to driving your business metrics and driving your product metrics, the top business metric and your North Star metric, which means that's where you should be working as much as possible, because you can then easily communicate, well, I'm working on this because it's going to drive the thing that you care about the most, that you talk about in the town hall every time. On the other hand, you'll find that sometimes you're working over here and you've got to ask yourself the question, should I even be doing this? There's a cryptocurrency exchange I've worked with quite a lot, and one of their teams found themselves in this place. They were looking at the strategy and they were saying, I just can't see how I contribute. We're a team that's been here for years and we've got these things we own, but they don't help on anything the business cares about. I worked with the CPTO on this, and ultimately the conclusion was that team shouldn't exist. It wasn't that they got rid of the people, it's that they redeployed the team to work in more valuable areas, things that were actually driving the metrics that the business cared about, both from a customer behavior and a business outcome. And it can be quite enlightening to realize that. Now, there may be some things that you just have to maintain for that are in that low leverage area, but if you can find the things that drive up to the top of the organization, you will find your decision making is significantly easier because you are speaking about the things that they care about. And so, I guess to summarize, first, learn to speak the language of business. Like, you need to know what the numbers are, how to calculate them. There are a couple of good people doing some good courses in this space. Simonetta out of Cologne is doing one. There's a gentleman called his name's gone, Stephen Haynes, across in the US. Before Marty Kagan was the godfather of product, Stephen Haynes, he was the granddaddy of product management. He's an ex-CFO, but he is fundamentally a master of the product finance side of things. And his book is the one I recommend to everyone if they want a resource. It's called something like the Business Acumen Handbook, because it helps people gather that knowledge. You don't necessarily need to go and do an MBA, although I still think it's a useful qualification and a useful knowledge set. The financial understanding you will gain is very valuable, along with all the strategic understanding, etc. But as a minimum, learn to speak that language, understand what they're talking about, and remember to use that language. One of the things I've observed with product people in particular is when they're in a room with engineers, they may well talk about a lot of business stuff because they're the least technical person in the room. Problem is, then they go into a room with the CEO and it flips and they start talking about everything technology and nothing business because they're the least business person in the room. The CEO is always going to be the most businessy person in the room. But the CEO is the one who has the most influence and the most control over your career. If they see you as just technical, it will limit you. If they see you as bringing a balance and actually bringing that business understanding, it will help you significantly. So make sure you understand the language, then use it and communicate. Why are you doing this thing and what impact do you believe it's going to have? It's not a perfect answer. You can't guarantee that that's the impact you're going to have. But you should be prepared to put a line in the sand and say, this is my belief of what we're doing it for and why we're doing it and the impact it will have. And then work as hard as you can to make sure that the impact you are driving towards is the impact that matters for your organization. Because it can be really, really frustrating if you're working on things, working really hard with good intentions, but the things you're doing drive the wrong needle and then leave you where just the organization is not thankful for the things you've done. That's a good time to maybe open the floor up for some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Phil, for this very interactive and relevant presentation. So if anyone has question, maybe just raise your hand and Phil will be very glad to answer to your question.
Or if you don't want to raise your hand and speak, you're also welcome to write in the chat.
Well, I can start maybe. Can you hear me?
Yes, fire away.
Okay, first, thanks so much for the presentation. I have a lot of to work with after this. At the moment, I'm working with a big company in an department that I'm the digital sector that I'm in is working with digital products for the operations. So until now, I'm there for 2 months only, and until now, I couldn't get information about which metrics our internal platforms needs to reach, because they're not looking at increasing customer, or we don't have any metrics looking at the outside customers. It's always about inside customers, like about performancing and these connections with operation efficiency. However, we don't have really metrics. Like, I couldn't relate what we are doing, especially because there are a lot to do with regulations. We are in the finance sector. So it's a lot to do with things that we have to do instead of really we are doing product development. A lot of times it's more about improvements in the product to make sure we are following the European regulations and so on. So it's been super hard. Any thoughts about it? How can I start diving deeply, because it's been so hard? I'm talking to business people, like to finance, but they don't know about products, especially when I talk about internal products. It's been so hard to get this information around.
Yeah, I mean, I can absolutely feel your pain. I've joined a company, I say, 6 weeks ago to help them sort their product out. And the first thing I asked is, where's the data? And this is a huge $42 billion business. Like, it's a small corner of this business, like a 30 million euro business internally. And the answer is we don't have any. Well, we've got sales data actually, but because we have external sales data. But anything beyond that, I don't even have any usage data on the product. It's causing me problems. But that means that's where I've prioritized actually in the future development. I need to get some analytics in place to be able to enable me to start making decisions. So we're following a quarterly planning sort of cycle model, and whether I love it or hate it, that's the model that I've inherited. And so literally 2 weeks after I joined, there was the next planning cycle, and getting data was the thing I made sure I forced into that next planning cycle to find a way of getting myself something. I suspect in the case that you're in, it's the avoiding costs, or maybe cost to serve could be the sort of metric that they would be interested in. And so, I mean, honestly, it often comes down to finding a best mate in finance. I remember in a previous life at Continental, and again, we had no data. There's a trend there. But the thing I ended up working out was there was the financial data I needed was in SAP. What I needed to do was just get access. And so I found a finance person who would run the reports for me a couple of times. I sat with them, they ran some reports. I took that data and I say I did. One of my team took that data and reworked it into a dashboard. And then at the next management meeting that we had, we presented the data. And all of a sudden, the leaders went from having no data and no ability to make decisions to, oh, wow, how did you get this? Wow, we can see what's going on. And then, like, the head of my business unit essentially said, what would it take to get this for everything? Like, we just did it for one part of the products or the portfolio, and explained to her what was going to be needed. After that meeting, we had the mandate to go and get it. So sometimes it's about finding a quick win, and that's often achievable through, should we say, going round the systems, finding a person who can get you the data, and building that relationship. That that's what worked for me, at least.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bruno, so I can see your comment down there. I'm just reading it. In one of your slides, you mentioned increased activation by 10%, leading to an increased ARR by 5%. Are there any advantages, disadvantages, preferences to use percentage versus dollars? I feel like dollars usually gets more attention. I agree. Short answer. My examples, I was trying to not get too specific. Sometimes percentages are better, sometimes dollars. I think if you're talking financial metrics, dollars are often better. There's also a bit of psychology. The bigger the number often works and is more powerful. So if you can say $200,000 versus 10% increase, $200,000 feels more powerful, is more impactful.
Awesome. Thank you.
Jorge, fire away.
Hi, Phil. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I'm thinking about the slide where you have the squares, the matrix about increasing revenue, reducing costs, protecting revenue, and avoiding costs. Okay, that's the one. And it seems to me these are fairly easy to get exec buy-in because they are sort of more like short term. And my question is how easy it is in real life to get exec buy-in when you have something like long-term goals like user research or exploring a new technology, because you don't see the money right away. You're not saving money. You're going to spend money, and sometimes the return is not so obvious and it's not immediate. So how easy it is?
So I'm going to be controversial and say you don't exist to do user research. You don't exist to do technology research. You exist to drive one of these things. Those other things are in service of this. So, for example, if we think about the 4 risks of product work: viability, value, feasibility, and usability. So that user research is about usability, which should increase customer usage and therefore should drive revenue, increase revenue, or protect revenue, i.e. you don't churn customers or you get more customers in. So it ultimately does tacitly tie to that, but it's about finding the balance of how much of that work you're going to do. You know, everyone outside of product hates the term discovery, because all the term means to them is we're going to go away and into a dark room or maybe go and talk to some customers and mess around and do some experiments for the next 6 months. And then eventually we might figure out what we want to build. But actually, we're just going to confirm what we already thought we were going to build. Because that's pretty much how it ends up. And this, one of the things that I think with discovery, for example, we need to reframe it. People think of discovery as being figuring out what to create. In particular in B2B, most of the time you know what it is. What you're actually trying to do with discovery is take the risk away. Is it the right thing to do? And is it therefore going to drive revenue? Is it the right thing to do? It's going to protect revenue. Can we build it? So there's your feasibility. A discovery spike, a discovery around feasibility is called a spike. And yeah, it's worth doing, but it should be quick and dirty. It's like figure out the feasibility of something is relatively quick. If we're talking fundamental research, where it comes to the pure technology side of things, that runs at a fundamentally different cadence as well. Like I was working with a deep tech company until a couple of months ago, where it can take 18 months for some of their research to either decide that it can work or can't work. And that's a fundamentally different thing. It's not product work, it's research at that level. And there's then a productization level that they go through beyond that. Yes, you may, as an organization, you have to invest in those sorts of things for the future. But there's got to be a tacit belief that that's going to ultimately increase revenue. And then you hit on the horizons part of it. What is the time horizon for that revenue? If the company needs it in the short term, then maybe it's not the right thing to be doing. If short-term revenue is more important, survival versus vision fit, coming back to Radhika Dutt, sometimes you've got to make that choice to do the simpler things, because the shorter term is more important. Other times you've got the time to go long term. It comes back to the classic product answer. It depends.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
If not, then all I will leave you to think about is, you've probably all heard the term product sense. I hated that term for a very long time. It conjures up this vision of a third eye, your ability to predict the future and have this magical capability, this superhuman capability. I've given up on fighting the term, but what I would like you to think about alongside that is growing your business sense, because that's just as important. If anyone has any last questions, I'm still here. Otherwise, have a wonderful Wednesday evening.
Cool. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Phil. Have a great one.
You too.
Awesome presentation.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
see a bunch of you in Lisbon later in the year, because I'm doing one of those workshops and one of those talks that was mentioned.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we see everyone in October at the conference, and have a great evening, everyone. Thank you, Phil, again for your presentation. And yeah, bye everyone.
Well, see
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye bye. See you soon.